Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the DMsGuild and tabletop RPG space. And this week, I'm joined by Kathleen Harrington. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean it's a nice sunny Thursday. I've immediately given away the recording date of this episode. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. It's finally getting to be some nice weather here, and I'm enjoying it.
Nice. Well, let's not dilly-dally and let's kind of jump straight into it then. For the people listening, I suppose what kind of products are you known for? What is your area of expertise per se?
Well, I have done a little writing in the DMsGuild area, but mostly I'm an editor, and that's what I like best because writing is hard. I can't turn on the creativity just when I want to. Editing, though, I can always edit. That's easy.
Interesting. So when you joined the DMsGuild or you released your first product, was that an editing job or was that a writing job?
It started off as editing and turned into co-authoring.
And I suppose what was the
name? I had bought a.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask what was the name of the product that you co-authored?
It was the very first thing was The Decapitated Children of Recolté by Paul Metzger. I had started off as an editor for him, but then he handed it to me and said, "If you want to do any polishing, go ahead." So I did some polishing, and he liked it, and so I'm all of a sudden I'm on there as a co-editor. Yay. And then he invited me to help write his Droop's monster manual of sidekicks, which I did. I did maybe just a little under a third of them.
Wow.
And so then eventually I started getting asked to just edit, and that was great. I've also worked on some other sidekick books with Adam Hancock's crew, and those were fun.
So I guess the question kind of kick it off then is so what drew you to the Dungeon Masters Guild then? What was kind of the realize that like, oh, I kind of want to get involved in some of this stuff?
I had been away from D&D for many years. My group that I used to play in dissolved. People went off to college. People got married. People changed jobs, and the group disappeared. And I couldn't find anybody to play with for 25 years.
Wow.
And then finally, in September of 18, I was invited to join a group. And I said, yay, finally. Well, within 2 months, they had twisted my arm into DMing. Now, I went from 1E to 5E. This was an experience. And I said, I don't know anything about DMing 5E. And they said, we'll help. And I said, okay. And we decided to do Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Yes.
Which was, in retrospect, probably not the best decision to jump in feet first on something that huge.
Yeah.
But it was fun and I enjoyed it. And very shortly I was saying to myself, I need something to help me. And that's when I found the DMsGuild, and I found all these things, and it was like, wow, because back in the day, TSR wrote all the stuff, and you either bought their stuff or you made your own stuff. There wasn't any other possibilities. Yeah. Well, here was the DMsGuild with all these wonderful things on it. And I started buying stuff. And eventually somebody asked for feedback. Paul Metzger asked for feedback. I sent him some feedback. And we got chit-chatting, and it just kind of happened.
Wow. It is kind of the classic call to adventuring where you weren't necessarily looking to kind of get involved, but you just kind of stumbled into it.
I was actually looking to do some editing. I had no idea that editing for D&D was even a possibility because, as I said, back in the day, it was TSR or nothing. Wizards of the Coast didn't even exist.
No, I suppose. Yeah. Wow. I must admit, my understanding of the previous editions is pretty poor. I've got again. So I realized there was a sale going on where someone was like, "Oh, I've got a bunch of fourth edition books that I kind of want to get rid of." So I was like, you know what, I want to pick them up and kind of see the difference between editions. Now, having that kind of first-hand experience, how different is 5e to first edition?
From a player's standpoint, 5e is like, the heavens open up, the angels sing, the light comes down, and it's like, oh, I can do everything. From a DM standpoint, it's tough, but I like it.
And
it makes you work really hard as a DM.
I love that you also started with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, because I don't know what it is, but that is by far my favorite hardcover. I love the city of Waterdeep. I feel that the campaign of it is quite distinct in that kind of, I guess, mad dash across the city with kind of everything that's going on. I am curious though. So in DMing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, you went looking onto the DMs Guild for help. Do you remember like some of the first products that you actually like purchased?
Yes, I bought Paul Metzger's Assorted Faction supplements and Valor's DM's Guide to Waterdeep and like that. And they really helped. I bought a few others, but those are the two that helped me the most.
And then it's funny that, you ended up editing on one of Paul's kind of projects, as it being one of the first ones that you bought as well.
Yes. And it opened the gate. He introduced me to Adam Hancock, and Adam had me project lead a couple of his sidekick books and co-author one of them. And then eventually other people started asking me to edit, and people started liking what I was doing and recommending me. And so now I'm staying busy. That's great. It's like one of these days I'm going to wake up and find out this is all a dream, but I'm going to enjoy it as long as it lasts.
So then I guess, so one thing that I've kind of spoken about a few times in the editors that I've had the chance to speak to is that there are, I guess the best way to describe it, there are many different subclasses of editors, in the terms of like, you have like the developmental, you have the very sort of kind of like grammatical heavy. What would you say your subclass of editor is, if you had to?
I'd say that I edit the same way I do everything else. I'm a generalist. Mm-hmm. I am adequate with just about everything. I am a specialist in not much, but I'm competent. Yeah. I'll spot your typos. I'll make suggestions for your grammar. I'll say, you know what? I don't believe players are going to understand this. I don't believe a DM is going to know what you're talking about. I can't get the picture here. How does this work?
Yeah.
And I guess that's considered developmental editing. But if I'm editing something, I'm going to tell them what I think.
And then, so I guess it is that kind of it is that balance of, I suppose, a good idea is always to put your ideas or to read through something through the eyes of your intended audience. I'm curious. So you mentioned that you have done some sidekick stuff, you've done some stat blocks, you've done a little bit of kind of more, I guess, adventure-y content. Is there like a particular type of product that you find easier to edit, or?
Well, if it's all stat blocks, it gets really boring.
Yeah.
But adventures, I've had a lot of fun with just about everything I've done. The adventures are fun. The supplements are fun. I'm just enjoying the whole process. Everything I've done, I've liked.
And then as well as in the kind of I guess okay, so from like a top-down view, so you've just been given a new project to edit on and stuff like that. What would you say is like your process? Is it literally kind of like from top to bottom, you just kind of comb your way through, or?
Generally, yes. Mm-hmm. I'll give it a glance over to get the general idea, and then I like it. It's best when people hand it to me in Google Docs, because that way we can be really transparent. I can do everything as suggestions. After I've worked with people for a while, sometimes they say, go ahead and take care of the punctuation just as edits. But if you want me to suggest, let's put a comma here, I'll suggest that rather than just doing it. And then put in everything as suggestions. Anything I see that I either don't understand or that I think might sound better if you said, I'll suggest it. And then they can take it or leave it. And if they don't take it, it's their product. I'm not going to insist.
Yeah, I suppose that is another conversation. Is that sometimes I know that when people kind of begin to work with editors for the first time, it is that kind of balance of do I treat their edits as gospel in a way that I have to, but realistically, the best experiences I had with an editor has always kind of been when it's been a back and forth conversation in times. Obviously,
right.
Misspellings and grammatical errors aside, I'm not going to argue with those. But the kind of more broader kind of structural ones, or like sort of flipping a sentence around, those sort of things is always like, yeah, it's a bit of a back and forth.
What I really like is when the author and I connect on Discord and have conversations out of the document about what's going on in our thoughts, and we bounce things off each other. And that, I think, just improves everything. Not to mention it's fun. You get to know a lot of people all over the world.
I get, yeah, it kind of is interesting as well, because I don't know how much you there's always that feeling of like you can kind of learn a good amount about a person from their work in a way. I don't know. Do you kind of like subscribe to that kind of theory?
Yes, to some extent, although I haven't found anything shocking. We're all geeks and nerds at heart, I think. So we all sort of speak the same basic language. But it's very interesting to talk to these folks who write so much, and so many of them are so creative. I'm nothing but in awe of what they can put out. And I wish I could call upon creativity and have it come when I want it, so that I could actually write. As it is, I can help you make your stuff better, but producing it's like handing me a blank canvas and a bunch of oil paints and saying, paint me a picture. So it's not going to happen.
I guess, so to talk a little bit about your, creative process then, is it the case that you feel you work better with within design constraints rather than a sort of just design something? It's again with the kind of droop, sorry. With those kind of, did you have more of a premise to go off of that made it easier to design? Or
I think I need a framework. I need, if somebody says to me, can you write me an adventure that goes from here to here and accomplishes this and is based here, then I could probably do that. Definitely on things like sidekicks and supplements, writing a spell or writing a monster or writing a sidekick, that I can handle. It's just the whole, let's say I wanted to do a one-shot adventure, coming up with a premise, that's the tough thing. If somebody hands me a premise, I can run with it. But thinking of a thing from scratch does not seem to be my strong point.
No, I must admit, sometimes I'm very much the same. In the case of where sometimes it is much easier working on a commissioned piece of work than it is working on your own sort of personal pet project. Because you're arguing with yourself about the how far the scope of the project, whereas she was I would a goblin sidekick. It's that's easy. I can do that. There's kind of a structure in place.
Exactly.
I did also. So I guess I did kind of want to ask then is as you're kind of to jump back to kind of the editing side of things. Is there something that you notice you kind of pick out, or you have not necessarily have to fix often, but any sort of structural things that you realize is quite a commonplace, I guess not mistake, but something that you feel,
There's minor things that are very common in colloquial speech that I like to formalize a little bit in written. Like, for instance, if someone says okay in the narrative, I'll change that to all right.
Yeah, fair.
Or suggested. I don't make the changes.
Yeah.
And if they say something like, the dwarf that did such and such, I change it to the dwarf who did such and such. And of course, there's the whole thing of between British English and American English.
Yeah.
And the DMs Guild wants everything in American English. So that's a matter of spelling, and whether you put the punctuation inside the quotation marks or outside it. And then in a few cases explaining, yeah, that's not a mistake. I have to change it because, oh, okay. So
no, I feel bad for the people who editors who kind of take my work, because again, as someone who is painfully British, the problem is because I use Google Docs for a lot of my work, as well as my writing. I don't want to change it to American in case all my actual work, because either way, someone's gonna have to be fixing those mistakes. And at least I feel like with editors, there is. They're being paid to delete all those U's, which is tedious, I imagine. But
I always like to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please go ahead.
I always like to go through the doc completely once, then have the author address the changes, and then go through it again to find what I missed, because invariably I missed something, usually a dozen somethings, and then go with, I'll go through a document 3 or 4 times if that's what it takes. And sometimes an author will say, oh, I added a paragraph here. Would you look at it?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. No, because it's an iterative process again, and it is that, and that's kind of what makes collaboration that much better, because again, it opens that conversation of being back and forth.
Right.
It's not the case of like, oh, you've made your edits, done, ship it. It's like, okay, well, let's.
No, the author hired me because they want their product to be the best it can be.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job, making it the best it can be.
Yeah.
But it's got to be their idea of the best it can be, not my idea of the best it can be.
So I suppose leaning into like one of my questions then is like, when it comes to editing, what is your favorite part of the process?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite part. I enjoy it just from start to finish, the whole process. It's fun tightening up sentences and making them read a little bit better. And when the author says, oh, wow, you made me sound so good, that's what makes it worthwhile.
I guess, is there anything that you kind of, when reading a sentence, so say you come across a sentence that doesn't quite flow right, is there kind of like, do you have like a cheat sheet or like a number of tools that you kind of go to try and help a sentence flow better? Or is it kind of just instinct?
Mostly it's instinct, because I've done a lot of editing over the years, not just D&D. And of course, I subscribe to the Chicago Manual of Style. And there's always Google. If I can't figure something out, I pop onto Google and look for examples of what I'm trying to do to get a handle on why this sentence doesn't work.
So you mentioned as well, so you've also done some editing outside of like D&D and stuff like that. What, I guess, just for like comparison, what other kind of editing work have you done?
My career was in pathobiological sciences at a school of veterinary medicine, and I edited a lot of papers for people.
Wow.
So I was in scientific editing in academia for many years. But I've also done newsletters and all sorts of stuff for various nonprofits, and I'm a Jill of all trades, master of none.
So that, I guess, like, is it like, I guess fundamentally, I mean, editing something in academia and compared to editing it, the fundamentals, I imagine, are very much the same. But what are like some of the, I guess, the nuances in D&D editing that didn't necessarily exist in other places?
Well, for one thing, the first thing I felt like I had to do was to learn the style. And, you can download the free style guide. And the first time I read it, my eyes just kind of glazed over and I what? But the more I did it, it has become second nature in the course of the year and a half that I've been doing this. The conventions, what to put in bold, what to put in italics, what to put in quotes, and what not to put in bold, italics, or quotes, when to capitalize, when not to capitalize. That's just something I had to learn because, of course, that isn't real world at all.
So in speaking to some other editors as well, there is always something within the style guide that doesn't always sit right with every editor. Is there something in the style guide that you don't necessarily agree with?
Yes, there's several things, but as long as the author wants it, let me back up. If the author says, I really want this always bolded, I say, the style guide says don't do it that way. Yes, I know, but I want it that way anyway. Okay, it's your product.
Yeah.
One thing, and I don't know that it's strictly the style guide or if it's just Wizards of the Coast or exactly what it is, I don't quite agree with the man and woman only being human. Why can't you have an elven woman? Why can't you have a dwarven man?
Yeah, no, I must admit that is something that I've noticed that has also kind of not necessarily been consistent in the official hardcover books. In the way that they've kind of spoken about when they introduced an NPC, sometimes they had it that it would specify their kind of gender. Other times it would you would have to infer it from the pronouns used. I use anytime I introduce a character, I do use a slightly different thing, which is within kind of like after the character's name in open brackets, it has their alignment, it has their pronouns, it has their race, and then it has their stat block, which I know is kind of again it's not quite fitting to the style guide, but I feel like it kind of has all that information that you kind of need within like a neat little bundle. So no, I'm kind of with you on that one. I guess I off the top of my head, what outside of human races, what do they say? Is it like this is me showing my lack of understanding for the style guide. But for a gnome, what do they recommend you do for a gnome?
You have to call. It's a male gnome or a female gnome, unless a character is saying, quote, go ask Benjamin, that gnome man over there. If it's in quotes, if a character says it, he can use man or woman.
Yeah.
But if it's in narrative, you can't.
Yeah. I suppose,
and to me that's contrived, but whatever. You pick your battles.
Yeah. No, I suppose, but that's what I mean. Again, it's always interesting to kind of ask editors about any sort of like pet peeves with the style guide, because you are right, 100%. Again, if it comes down to what the designer wants, but if it was your own project and stuff like that, it's kind of like you can bend those rules slightly and stuff like that, and it's not gonna ruin necessarily a product as.
I've never yet seen anything get kicked back because they bolded the wrong thing or they used the word man or woman when they should have used male gnome or female gnome. Yeah. So as far as I can see, the style guide is more suggestions or guidelines than rules, because that's a style guide, not style rules.
Yeah.
But I understand the idea is to keep things consistent across the brand, to make things that one person does compatible enough with a thing that somebody across the world does, that anybody can pick it up and understand what it is.
Yeah.
And in that context, it makes sense to have a set of standards. and I'm okay with following it. I don't think it needs to be followed slavishly. If there's a reason to deviate.
No, then I guess like that kind of leads into like my next question is, okay, so if you kind of if the editing as a whole is something that you kind of enjoy overall, is there actually like a part that is your least favorite though?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you have like, what is your least favorite part of editing?
Stat blocks. Because it's so easy to make mistakes, and to not spot mistakes, to have to recalculate. If I'm actually editing stat blocks, I feel like I have to calculate the hit points. I have to calculate the pluses and like that to make sure, unless they've just copied it from, say, the monster manual. If they've written from scratch, then yeah, that has to be edited.
Yeah.
I mean, really combed through. And math is my dump stat. I have to rely on, I have a spreadsheet someone gave me for calculating hit points.
Nice.
And that's a huge help.
Because there are a number of things which are always hard. Like you have to go through the thing of like, okay, so depending on the creature's size indicates like its hit die, like whether it's like small, large, or whatever. Then it's depending on the challenge rating that dictates what its proficiency bonus is.
Yes.
Am I missing? Is there like a third thing that you often kind of have to like triple check on stat blocks?
Oh my goodness. I'm probably, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. But if you ask me, do I like to do narrative or dialogue or stat blocks? Narrative and dialogue any day.
Yeah, I suppose so. Something that I guess I sometimes struggle with when it comes to like narrative in particular is the balance of how much information you want to give versus going over the top with kind of I think again I think at least with my writing style, I can be quite wordy. I think I have an innate ability to type in the way that I speak, which is great because it captures my voice in a way. But then I'm not concise in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, I think too many of us want to tell a story rather than write an adventure, and we can't be as verbose as we want to in these adventures. They need to get to the point. They need to say what you're trying to accomplish, where you're trying to accomplish it, who's involved, and leave the fluff to the DM to fill in. You can suggest a few things, but to explain the stitching on the edge of the furniture, that sort of thing, is just beyond the scope.
Yeah,
even though if you were writing a story that wasn't an adventure, you would say these things. But if you are trying to get the whole idea behind Dungeons and Dragons, it's action. It's doing something. It's not sitting and examining your surroundings in such meticulous detail that you miss the orc coming at you from the closet.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I think it's when you come to like, again, with adventure writing in particular, sometimes you are writing with a very particular image in your head, and I think it is that disconnect, that balance of like if you have to trust the DM somewhat. You have to give them a little bit freedom to give them, obviously there are DMs who are going to want the guidance, and that's why you need to hit a certain threshold of information. Like tell them what they need to know. Like if the chandelier is important, describe the chandelier. If it is just there for furniture, you can just say there's a chandelier in the room.
Precisely.
Is I guess again, do you have it like? I'm trying to think of like is it just what is my question, I suppose, is do you I guess do you have like a gauge or a way of kind of like when you are editing an adventure? Is that something that you're kind of hyper vigilant for to try and see where it's kind of crossing into that kind of verbose writing for writing's sake sort of thing?
Yes, it doesn't happen all the time. In fact, it really doesn't happen very often. There are people that I have worked with that do go into more detail than I think is necessary. And if I see this, I'll mark it and say, why don't we cut out these words? And sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't. But I've had really very cooperative creators to work with. Generally, if I suggest a thing, they decide I'm right. But yes, it is difficult for many people to be concise. And it's certainly difficult for me if I'm writing to be concise. I have to write a thing and then go back and cut out half the words.
Yeah. So there hasn't been any sort of heated arguments about the threading on the curtains.
No, I've not had anybody give me any real argument. In fact, generally speaking, they just go accept. Yeah. And I'm thinking, are you even looking at what I did? What if I'm not right? But no, they generally, I think if someone actually hires an editor, they want it edited.
Yeah, I think it's easy to again, I've heard of a number of kind of decent ways to kind of self-edit. The idea of like using a text-to-speak way to kind of just hear your words back is kind of a good way. But I don't know. I'm in the editors I've worked with before. I think I'm very much of the I don't know why the moment it's in an editor's hand, I feel like I know nothing. I've shambled words together, and it's the editor's job to kind of like, just make it actually make sense in some way. So that's why I'm like, I agree with everything you said. I've sent them what is it, a clay figurine in the odd shape of a sculpture that they just kind of do the hard work to actually shape it in. But yeah, no, I guess I guess how do you find sort of as you're kind of editing, are you the type to kind of leave comments of like I really like this, or are you kind of very much like I'm just kind of leave comments on the kind of things that need work? I'm
do both.
Yeah,
I'll comment, this is really cool, that kind of thing. If someone puts something out there that is just so perfect, I'll either tell them directly in a message on Discord or put it in a comment, because well, everyone likes to know when something works right. Yeah. Everyone likes to hear that another person likes their stuff.
I think as well. The editors that have done that, I think it's sometimes as a designer and stuff like that. I don't know why, but editing can sometimes feel antagonistic, which it's not intentionally. It's just the idea of you handing someone something and they go, okay, well, here's some problems with it, and you go, I know it wasn't perfect, but why? Why must you attack my? And yeah, those sort of remarks are they definitely kind of remove that sort of that feeling of kind of immediately.
Not too long ago, there was one of these silly Facebook quizzes. Tell me your job, only make it sound scary. And I wrote, I take other people's words and do terrible things to them. Yeah. And I'm always afraid that really people are going to think that, but they don't seem to. They generally are very receptive to my comments and all. And that's extremely gratifying, because when I first got into it, I thought, is this going to be an adversarial relationship? Mm-hmm. And knock on wood, it has not been.
No, and it absolutely shouldn't be. I don't think, again, it's a case of like, again, as viewing it from like a hobbyist angle, everyone's kind of involved to, because they have like a passion for it. It should never feel like your members of your team are actively working against you.
Right.
And no, yeah, I guess, yeah, and it's funny how those little kind of comments can, like, or positive remarks can kind of, yeah, go a long way, and like, oh, maybe I am, maybe I am on the right track with this. So then
I think we all need to hear that we're doing it right.
Yeah, in between, obviously, all the corrections.
Right. Put in the occasional positive thing, just so it doesn't sound like you're saying this sucks from top to bottom,
Yeah.
which would be devastating.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. So then, in all the kind of editing that you've done, has there been like one particular edit or just one kind of series of suggestions that you distinctly remember because you're quite proud of them?
Yes, I can't really say a whole lot about it because the piece has not yet been published, but there's been one that I've been working on for a while. It's now out of my hands. They're into the layout and art end of it. Mm-hmm. But it's been a huge amount of fun. I helped actually with some of the development of it, made some suggestions that were taken, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it published because I won't be a co-author on it. I didn't actually write anything, but the lead creator and I had a lot of conversations that led to some plot development, and that was a lot of fun.
And is it again? So without, again, not giving the product away or anything, but is it like a kind of adventure side of things, or is it another sort of?
Yes, it's a set of adventures.
Ooh, exciting. No. I suppose, yeah, I suppose when it comes to like sets of adventures or any sort of like continuation, those sort of conversations about keeping like a continual theme or just kind of keeping things coherent across like a whole brand, it gets harder to manage the moment you kind of begin to kind of split things up.
It's challenging, but this particular author and his team have done, I think, a great job, and I think it's going to be a very solid product when it comes out.
Wow, exciting. So then I suppose is there maybe a thing that you're maybe slightly less proud of, but maybe you can, that is out of the kind of products you kind of have released?
There have been a couple that I sort of wished I wasn't hired as the editor on, but we got through them. So
yeah, I suppose that is I guess, yeah, that is a bit of balance. I think that in the same way that like there are always going to be kind of collaborations that don't necessarily meet expectations for like a number of reasons. And yeah, it's there's no polite way to say it, stuff like that, but they're difficult situations to be in for most people involved. Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, I guess it's with I don't know why I just have like a different view that somehow it's worse for editing, but I don't know. I've never edited, so
I find it's very satisfying to take something that is almost there and make it get there.
Yeah. And then I guess I imagine, yeah, the kind of processes where you can sort of see the diamond in the rough sort of situation where you see the potential, but then I imagine there's probably going to be a considerable amount of work to get it to there.
It varies widely, but I've been fortunate in that the vast majority of the creators I've worked with have really been competent storytellers. And it's just taken a little polishing to get all the little stylistic details and everything ironed out. There have been very few that I really thought, oh, won't I ever get through with this? That almost doesn't happen.
So,
and every one of the people that I have worked with has been great to work with. The products vary, but the people are great.
Yeah, which is good. It kind of keeps the motivation high. Speaking of people, you kind of mentioned that obviously you've worked with some of Adam Hancock with some of the sidekicks, and was it Paul? Is it Metzger? How have you found working with people across multiple products and kind of again building up that, I guess, rapport of editing multiple of their products?
I really, really enjoy it. There's a couple of people who have had me edit several things of theirs and sort of keep me, you will work for me again, won't you? Definitely. I certainly will.
I guess
anytime.
It's nice to, again, when you establish a good working relationship with an editor, of just kind of knowing how they respond to your work, and it's hard not to kind of rely on them for multiple products, because it's kind of like nice to. I sometimes view I don't know, I've had the pleasure to kind of work with a kind of diverse range of editors. In that, I don't know, it feels like I'm collecting editors. And it's in no ways that I don't know, and each one's interesting. It kind of goes back to the idea of like mentioning how there's multiple different like subclasses of editors, in that it's like you really kind of pick up about what is like an editor's I guess favorite things to get engaged with, how they respond to edits, what sort of like compliments they leave, how they respond to jokes and all that. But no, it's kind of interesting, to kind of hear about how working with someone consistently kind of builds up that kind of that really nice, I get, business relationship. It feels weird calling it that.
It's been a lot of fun, and I'm hoping it continues, because the more you do, the more you earn. Yeah. What can you say?
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's surprising how quickly it kind of all builds up. And that kind of like and I guess the other thing of that is like the impact that releasing a new product has on the sales of your older products. It's always weird that like the best way to sell some of your older stuff is to release something new, but I'm not gonna fight with that logic. Sometimes it just works. So then, looking across everything that you've done so far, at least with your experience with like 5e and on the DMsGuild, is there like a particular lesson that maybe you wish you'd learned maybe a little bit sooner, or?
I think the first things that I worked on, I was a lot less flexible than I am now. I tend to be a rules stickler, but it is, as I learned that, okay, the style guide is not the rule book. Mm-hmm. It's a guide. Then I've stopped hassling authors about minutiae that really don't matter.
Fair. So sorry.
It's just an experience. The more you do, the more you learn, the better you get.
Do you think, again, I don't know if this question has anything, but my understanding of the older editions of D&D is that they just seem stricter, and the fact that they have rules for everything. Do you think that a good amount of that is balancing that 5e is so open by comparison that maybe you? Yeah.
Understand, I played 1e and I played 5e. Yeah. I saw nothing in between. So I don't know. I don't know the evolution. That's true. And from what I've heard, I didn't miss a whole lot. But most people seem pretty happy with 5e.
Yeah. No, I think it has been kind of heralded as being very sort of easy to learn, easy to grok, and you kind of have that journey. I'm glad I started with 5e. I guess I couldn't have started with any other edition, but it's always kind of interesting, kind of hearing about how things were. So Is there, I guess, if I guess this is more of like a kind of like personal question. You kind of mentioned before that if you had to choose between kind of working on a particular project, you would put narrative kind of at the top. Would you say there's like a particular like brand or style of narrative that you kind of like to edit the most? Is there kind of like certain themes or?
No, I don't have a favorite, and I really don't have a non-favorite either, because, well, I like a lot of things. I read a lot of different things, a lot of different genres, and to see the different directions that people take these adventures and supplements and so forth in has just been totally fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
There may come a time when I've done so much stuff that I think, oh, another one of those. That time hasn't happened yet. I hope it never does.
And then I imagine, I guess this is a bit of a question, but in writing or been editing a good amount of DM's Guild content, do you think it's changed the way you've DM'd at all?
Actually, I haven't DM'd since I've been heavy into editing.
Interesting.
The group that I'm in, there's two of us who kind of back and forth DM, and after we had to go virtual, the enthusiasm for playing waned quite a bit, and we really have not played much for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Now our entire group is vaccinated.
Woo!
And it's not a huge group, so we're playing in person.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is great.
Nice. And is it essentially picking up literally back where you were?
No, we're starting Descent into Avernus now, and thank heavens I'm not running that one.
I suppose, was it thank the 9 hells, I guess?
You really?
No, also no, yeah, no, it's weird. It's funny because at least with me and my group of friends, I'm fortunate to have a bunch of group of friends kind of all over the country. And with everything that's been going on, it's been something of like a silver lining that I've been able to almost play more D&D. Just with all my sort of friendship groups jumping into kind of virtual groups. But no, we are currently through in the final third of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. My party have just hit level 4.
Oh wow!
Which is it's exciting. Things are kicking off. I'm curious, like how far did you get through Waterdeep?
Oh, we were almost to the end when the pandemic shut us down.
Yeah,
and most of the group were like, they just hated virtual playing so much that I ended up saying, okay, fine. This is what happened. And just did the finale, just told them.
Nice.
I said, level. But I was somewhat hampered because they started the adventure at a higher level than they really should have. So that was why I was buying all these supplements to see how can I make it more challenging for them, besides just adding another 30 goblins.
Yeah, no, that is, yes, it's something that balance. And again, it's kind of weird to think that it is one of the ones like campaigns that just sits between the 1 to 5 range, which they haven't really. Again, most go on far beyond that, and I think that's kind of what I like. I think knowing it's going to be a kind of shorter campaign. I have made it a little bit harder for myself because I know Waterdeep, you're meant to choose a season and you choose like a villain. I've kind of thrown them all into the mix, just to kind of keep things a little bit interesting and just kind of have that, because I don't know, I just like the idea that all the villains in the book are just so interesting. They all exist within Waterdeep, so it makes sense that they all would be vying for the key to the dragon horde and everything. But yeah, I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I think it's going to be a mess, but it'll be a fun mess. So pivoting slightly to, I guess, the kind of the future and the community as a whole, then, would you say that you have like a dream project that you would kind of love to kind of be involved in, or?
I see when people advertise services or just chit-chatting and writing discussion, I see things that I think, oh, that sounds so cool. One of these days I'd like to. However, telling you yes, I'd like to do this thing, or yes, I'd like to do that thing. I can't think of any at the moment. Basically, most things interest me.
I guess that is, yeah, it's kind of that the interesting side of being an editor is, I suppose, you do have I don't know, I feel like editors have a wider range of projects that they can kind of involve themselves in than a designer, because I know there are certain projects that I just can't write for. I just like I would be a poor fit, and it would just be, but yeah, especially in your position, being, a well-versed editor, it's kind of, you do have that somewhat, I guess, like, be like, oh no, I like the sound of that, I'm gonna throw my editorial hat into the ring.
And there are some some projects advertised that I think, that's not really my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them are, if I have time, I'll toss an application out there and see what happens. Sometimes I'm hired, sometimes I'm not. But I'm willing to try just about anything. If you don't learn, you don't grow.
No,
and if you don't grow, you stagnate.
So I suppose, do you have any sort of preference between like being a sole editor on a project, or as opposed to like one of the larger scale projects that have like multiple editors? I'm curious if you have any.
I have not really had co-editors on a project.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the author sometimes does self-editing, and that's fine. But actual official multiple editors, there's only one or two that's been the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not been, the other editor had already done whatever they'd done before I got it. So
yeah,
there was no kind of back and forth with it.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, I suppose. I think I made the joke once that sometimes, like with projects that have multiple editors, I always feel like, does the editor edit the comments of the editor? Like how far down do you go with like the editor stack?
I've never seen a comment from another editor in a document that I've worked on.
Interesting.
I guess the creator has either resolved them all, or there weren't any there to begin with. I don't know.
No, it's I guess it's that interesting thing, and I suppose those large projects that have, again, like 3 to 4 editors on them and stuff like that, I don't envy the position of trying to make things coherent among it varies on project, because things like subclasses, each thing is kind of its own individual package that it kind of can sit in isolation, and that's to be, it's when it comes to things like items. So there's item compilations or what have you. Those I don't envy the editor, because I feel like you would need like someone to at least, like, on a high level, to go through all the editor's work at the end and just make sure there is, like, that's why I'm not an editor. This is why I'm just a layman writer man.
I have found that what an editor sees and what a real person sees can be two different things. You see, sometimes I've worked with like a team of authors on, say, a compilation of maybe weapons or spells or something.
Mm-hmm.
And each one writes X number of things. And while they're different in style, and I sometimes wish they sounded more like each other, I don't think in the finished product it's an issue, because I don't think the people who buy the product are going to read it from cover to cover and say, you know what, page 4 and page 7 were written by 2 different people.
No,
I don't think that happens.
I think you're all right. I suppose, I guess that was me kind of not necessarily thinking about the kind of customer at the end of, like, product to product and stuff like that. Obviously, an adventure, they're going to kind of want to read from start to finish. For things like items and like, sidekicks and stuff like that, I imagine it is more kind of like they are looking for something in particular. Like they are going side by
right.
They aren't literally reading through saying, oh, these two spells seem like they're written by different people. But then I guess that doesn't really matter too much, because they're spells.
Yeah, I have worked on one sizable. It was a city world with an adventure tucked into it, and different people wrote different sections. And for that, I did try to make the language fairly coherent, fairly cohesive, I should say. Coherent, definitely.
Yes.
But because I didn't want each section to sound totally disjointed. So I did some generic smoothing. But it's largely not been a huge issue. I think most people who write for D&D have an idea of the sound of D&D, the sound of the narrative in their own heads, and emulate that to a great extent.
No, yeah, I suppose it kind of, because everyone is kind of coming from the same sort of, like, again, many people have the books, so they kind of know what they're going. I suppose it kind of makes sense. Maybe I'm kind of exaggerating this problem that I don't know exists. I'm just saying it's a problem for no reason. I guess to talk about the kind of collaborations and everything, then, you mentioned, again, I keep bringing it out, but, like, it coming from leaving feedback and then actually getting involved in the editing process of some of these products. Are there a group of people, or like some people in the tabletop RPG community that particularly inspires you?
Oh, yes. Adam Hancock and Jeppe Valeur and Paul Metzger, the ones that I started reading early and have had the privilege to work with since, they're inspirational to me. Now, since I'm not DMing, I haven't really been buying the products, especially since I've been working. I haven't been buying the product. When I say working, I mean editing. I'm retired, so I hadn't actually been doing anything to earn money for a long time.
Again,
so this is a great treat in that respect, too.
Editing is still work. I can imagine some of these things. I imagine it's a considerable amount.
It's work, but it's work that's so much fun. You think, they're paying me for this? Cool.
Yeah, I guess it's both sides. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I finally found what I want to do when I grow up.
Like I said, it's a kind of, it's never too late, as they kind of say.
Right.
So then
I occasionally talk to. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead. It's
I occasionally talk to people who want to break into editing, and they say, "How do you do it?" And I say, "Offer to do something for free," because that was what I had done. Would you like me to take a look at this and see if I can find your typos for you? And that's how it all started, how I got into being offered, well, I don't know if I could afford you. Well, I was just offering to read the thing, and things worked out. Yeah. But I have found that offering a service, eventually you get lucky. Somebody will try. Somebody will give you the chance. Somebody will open the door for you. And once that happens, it may just be a little crack. The door may not open wide. But if you can get maybe not even a foot, maybe just a finger in, eventually, assuming you know what you're doing, eventually it does open. And then sometimes it opens so wide you think, how did this happen? But while I love getting repeat offers from creators, I completely understand the idea that many have that they should spread the wealth around and try different editors, because there are a lot of people who are probably very, very good who just haven't had the chance yet.
Yeah. No, I think as well, you kind of touched on a funny mark, which is like the editors who really enjoy editing feeling like, I can't believe I'm having the chance to do this really cool editing work. And then on the flip side, the writer's like, I can't believe someone's actually editing my work. And it's like both sides feel like they're getting the good side of the boat, which is why it kind of works. Everyone's happy, hopefully.
it's been a tremendously positive experience.
So then, I guess to kind of again, that's kind of like a lovely note to kind of round things off and kind of almost end on. My next two questions are kind of simple. It's like, if there's anything that you're working on now that you can talk about, what is it? And attached to that, where can people hear about your work if they kind of, again, if they do want to hire you to get some editing done?
Well, I'm on Discord. Kathleen Harrington / she, her, and my name is on quite a few. I have a portfolio. I have a website, which, I can send you the link if you're interested.
Yeah, there will be a link to that in the description. So if people are interested,
that shows all the publications I've been involved with. Some of the fun things, I'll quickly tangential this, have been retro editing something that's already been published.
Interesting.
I've recently retro edited a piece that was published 2 years ago, but he decided he wanted it better than it was. So he gave me the electrons and I did the edits, and then he rewrote version whatever it was of the publication. And so now my name is on something that was published before I even got it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like, I must be. I do talk to a lot of creators who always talk about going back and revamping their old products. Not many of them mention going back and getting an editor involved. So no, that's an exciting process.
And I thought it was a wonderful idea, is to recognize that, I could have made this better. Mm-hmm. Let me see what I can do about it now.
Yeah, no, I suppose, again,
because it's all PDFs. You can always upload a new one.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of shows that growth of, like, you're recognizing the process you kind of want for your products and everything. Yeah, no, again, it's like you said about, when there's no growth, there's stagnation, and you kind of want to lift all your products up as you grow as a creative.
Exactly. I am always gratified at the number of authors who they just want it better. They just want it the best it can be. I know there are those out there who think good enough for who it's for. Mm-hmm. But those seem to be in the minority. Most people want it good.
Yeah. And I get about it. Like, you're slapping, like, in most people, you're slapping your name on it. You're putting yourself out there. You should kind of want it to be, the best it possibly can be. And that's why I think, editors are kind of like, fundamental to making it as good as it can be. It's a step of the process. But looking at the time, Kathleen, we've done it. We've managed to chat for at this point over an hour. We've done it. So first and foremost, thank you so much for taking some time to sit down and have this chat. It's been really insightful to kind of have just such a deep dive into like your editing process and kind of how you kind of as I say, how you snuck your way into the DMsGuild community. But
just luck. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Matthew. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah. And I guess the only other stuff that I can have to say is, I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. I have some Kickstarters that I would invite you all to check out in the description below, which I think they should all still be running. There's Comets and Cockpits. There is What a Lovely Adventure, and there is Cities Myth Atlantis. So take a look at those in the description. They're all different levels of funding. Exciting stuff. And that is the end of this week's episode. So my very final question then is, how do we end a podcast?
It's been wonderful. Thank you.